Good evening, everybody. So thank you all for either joining us during the live Zoom session or watching us afterwards for this year's Fall 2023 CyberHawks competition overview. The general purpose for this evening's meeting is going to be to kind of talk through the 4 different competition options that we have as CyberHawks members for this semester. It'd be great if you could go ahead and sign in with that QR code. I don't have the link handy at the moment, so I can't throw it into the chat, but it's okay if you're not necessarily able to access that right now. At least in terms of kind of what specifically we're going to be talking tonight. I'm going to go over kind of the CyberHawks competition history. I'll talk about kind of where we came from in terms of doing competitions. I'll talk about some of the failures that we've had in the past, and then more recently some of the success that we've come into more recently with kind of the experience that we've gained over the years. Then I'll talk about one of the first major ones that we'll be doing this semester, which is the CyberForce competition. We have the Heimstorm competition, the National Cyber League, and then we're also looking at tentatively doing an Illinois Tech cybersecurity competition as well. And that one's exciting because we can tailor it to the students here at IIT. We can make it more beginner friendly, and it's pretty exciting that we're going to try and see if we can get something like that off the ground for this year. And before I continue, just as a heads up, feel free to either unmute yourself and ask a question, or you're also welcome to throw a question in the chat. I'll try to keep my eye on it throughout the meeting, but if you do have a question, feel free to just kind of shout it out, and I'll be happy to try and get there. So at least in terms of a history for the CyberHawks from a competition perspective, we were founded back in 2018, back in the fall. And then pretty much right away in that spring, we started to do competitions. So that spring, we did what was known as the Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, and we did pretty horribly. At the very least, in terms of kind of at the time, most of our members didn't really have any cybersecurity or any practical cybersecurity experience. So we kind of went into it. We didn't necessarily know what we were doing. We had a theoretical approach that we were trying to apply, but at least in terms of a practical working with the machines, getting to know exactly what to do, we didn't really do a very good job. So we struggled a lot in terms of at least like those beginning stages for at least the CyberHawks teams. So the first competition we did was the Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition. I've got 2 pictures here. The first one on the top there, that was the first team that ever did it. Our wonderful little bunch that we had there. We didn't really have too much experience. And then just 4 years later, 4 years later, this past spring, we came 3rd place overall in Illinois. And then we moved on to what was called the wild card game, and we placed 4th place there. So we grew a lot over those 4 years. We learned a lot. We learned a lot about what are some of the practical methods, what are some things that you have to actually look out for. And hopefully throughout this semester, we have our Zero to Hero seminar series. And hopefully by kind of watching through those, we've taken a lot of what we've learned and we've kind of instilled it into those seminars and trying to kind of pass along that knowledge that we've learned participating in these competitions. Next, we have our CyberForce competition, and that was something that we're competing in again this semester. So the CCDC, that's only a spring competition. So next semester, after the winter break, when we come back, we'll start to kind of look for a new team to get together for that competition. But at least for this semester, we've got the CyberForce competition. Again, we've got the top picture there. That was the first year that we competed. And then the bottom one there, that was our last year. And we grew a lot in that one. I think when we competed for the first time in fall 2019, I want to say we came, I think like there were like 150 teams, where I think we were like 120th. It was really bad. But then we came back last year and we ended up coming 12th nationally out of 169 teams. So that was something that we're extremely proud of, that we've kind of rebounded, kind of entered back into that competition scene again. And I'll talk more about the CyberForce one tonight. I've got some materials that they gave out last year, so specifically the rule book that they used last year. And then I've also got a few of the deliverables that we put together last year as well that I'll kind of showcase as well. And then finally, the one that we've at least come most successful at is our NCAE Cyber Games teams. So the NCAE Cyber Games, again, this one's a spring one, so there's nothing this semester. but they're looking at hosting it again in the spring. And we're really excited about that one because we found a lot of success during these competitions. So in 2022, that was the first year that the competition actually took place. One of the students came up to me and was like, hey, I'd like to get a team together. I was like, okay, it's been a while since we've really done competitions, but go ahead. And we ended up coming in first place, in large part due to especially the leadership of John Ford and Kat Stevens. So those were two of the members that really put in a lot of legwork to kind of get our teams off the ground in that end. And then last year we returned again. We won our regionals. And then unfortunately the competition was a lot stronger, and they took a lot of steps last year to kind of make the finals, and that took place in Tampa, Florida. So if you see in the bottom one, we went down to Tampa in April, so pretty much near the end of the semester. So that was a really great experience as well. So just to kind of give you an overview of kind of some of the history that we have with competitions, we try our best to really kind of pass along all the knowledge that we have. So if you're in that Zero to Hero seminar series, that's the right place for you to be in, especially if you're a beginner, if you've never done anything like this before, that Zero to Hero is a great place for you to start. I'll talk today about, again, we have 4 options that our students can take part in this semester competition-wise. I'll talk about which ones are more beginner-friendly, how much time that they might take for each of them. And so there's different places that maybe you can kind of fit into for this semester, at least in terms of competing in something and participating in something. And of course, one of the things that I really like to do is I like to make our practices open as well. So unless there's something that is extremely important or something that I need to have complete focus on, so if we're getting really close to that competition, I might close it up. But I really like making those practices open so that everyone can kind of take a look at, they can come in, they can see what the process is, what we're doing as well. So even if you maybe aren't as confident right now, maybe you want to take a semester or two to kind of get your sea legs going a little bit from a competition perspective, that is a-okay. We're happy to kind of work with you kind of so that you can kind of get the lay of the land. Now, one of the important things, and again, we've got these 4 competitions we'll be talking about today. I'll actually move on to the next slide. But again, we've got these 4 competitions for you all this year. I know that there's, especially at the beginning of the semester, and I would kind of recommend this, especially for some of our first year, and both first year in terms of like an undergrad and also from a grad perspective, is don't go too far out. So in terms of like, don't go ahead and sign up for all of them unless it's a light semester this semester, or you feel pretty confident that you'll be able to handle your course load. Because from a competition perspective, at least for these first 3, so for CyberForce, Hivestorm, and NCL, not as much for NCL, but especially for CyberForce and Hivestorm, you've got other teammates that are also relying on you. So do take it into account when you're looking at competitions that you want to be part of this semester, and kind of take that into consideration where, okay, well, maybe I'm not entirely sure how things are going to shake out. Maybe I'll just try 1 this semester, or maybe I'll try 2. If you're somebody who's a little bit more seasoned, maybe you have a little bit more practice, or you have a lighter schedule this semester and you feel more confident taking on a little bit of a heavier payload, feel free to register for all of them, but just know that, again, that you've got other teammates, especially for Hivestorm and CyberForce, that you've got to kind of keep an eye on and make sure that you're contributing as well. So the very least for the first one, so for CyberForce, and this was one of the first ones that we've ever competed in, and we're really happy to kind of make this a part of our regular seasonal approach. So CyberForce is a 6-student cyber defense competition. I mentioned it during our general body meeting. Today we've got a little bit of a rules read through, so in a second I'll pop off of the presentation, I'll pull up the rules book, and we'll kind of look at it a little bit. But next week, I believe I kept this on Wednesday, September 11th, we're going to be having an introductory meeting. So for those of you who have filled out the interest form, I highly recommend attending that. I made it 9:30 to 10:30. Hopefully that allows more people to make it. I'm pretty positive there's no classes that happen from 9:30 to 10:30. I know with travel that can be a little bit tricky. So if you're maybe going back home, I apologize in terms of the scheduling on that. But we do have a meeting from 9:30 to 10:30. The main thing for that is to get more information to you, to answer more questions regarding how that competition runs. And especially for the people who aren't registered for a team yet, I want to make sure that we get you into a group of 6. We get a team captain allocated, and then we can go ahead and put you in for the registration. So at the very least, in terms of if we were to look at the key dates here, so registration does close at the end of this month of the 29th. So just keep that in mind. Again, we're going to try to make sure that by next Wednesday, for at least the third team that we're getting together for this competition, that we've got you guys down locked, and then we can go ahead and get you folks registered. And then at least from further from that, we've got October 6th. And these, again, these are key dates from the competition side of things. At the very least here at IIT, we're going to have a few additional practices leading up to it. So even though there's that October 6th date later on in this month, we will have additional practices where we'll talk about more specific things that teams can do to prepare for that. And then at the very least, in terms of very, very important dates to look out for, we have October 23rd. So we gain access to those competition networks. We're allowed to start doing things. And then it's very important to note that this competition is in person, November 3rd and 4th. It's going to be in St. Charles, Illinois at the Q Center. We're going to try and figure out a good plan, at least in terms of travel on that. And then we're going to try and find out whether or not teams have to stay on site as well. So we're gathering more information on that. So just stay tuned. Next Wednesday, we're going to have way more information, at least in terms of a logistical matter. Tonight, we're going to talk more about just in general, kind of how that competition runs. So at least in terms of this competition, and I would rate this one as a more intermediate challenge. And I would only say that because there's a lot of moving parts to it. So this is the official, this is they call it their communication structure. In this case, we're technically the blue team. So if I go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and find my highlighter, or at least my laser pointer. So we're going to be that blue team here. And as you can see here, we communicate with a lot of people. So we communicate with this orange, which is the C-suite. If you've never heard of that before, those are essentially your executive management. So there's a video that gets associated with this competition. I'll actually play a little bit of it in a minute here. There's a way that we have to be able to communicate to upper management. There's a red team, so the red team's going to be doing stuff. There's a what they call assume breach, where they're already in the network and we have to identify where they are. And then there's also a vulnerability part where we have to patch vulnerabilities. And then finally, there's a green team component. So we have to make sure that the system is still usable for users. So a lot of the times, especially in cybersecurity, we really focus on kind of locking things down, making sure that things are extremely tight. But at the same time, the users still have to be able to use things. So that's one of the things that they focused on with this competition, is that not only are you making things secure, but that you can communicate what those steps that you took are, and then users are still able to use the system. And that's reflected in the score. So you can see here, the green team and the orange team make up about a quarter of the overall points as well. So that's just something that I kind of wanted to point out there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the rules document. Let me see where I put it. I know for sure I put it on the Discord server. So if you're part of the CyberHawks Discord, I highly recommend being a part of it. If you're not, I'm pretty sure everybody here joined via that. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the rules. There's a channel called Cyberforce Interest. So at the very least from there, you're able to look at, I posted an interest form that I'm going to have at the very end of this presentation this evening. And then, here, give me one sec, everybody. There we go. Cool. And then give me one sec. So I posted an interest form, and I also have this document here. So these were the rules from last year. They're about 18 pages long, and you're all welcome to kind of read through them. Yeah, what's ahead? What's up, Beth?
You're recording still.
Yeah, no, that's okay. This is the fine part.
Okay.
It's when I'm talking about Hivestorm that I'm actually going to pause the recording. So thanks for kind of pointing that out there, Beth. So you're welcome to go ahead and look at this. At least in terms of kind of what they did last year. Let's see. So at the very least, so there's a general description of kind of what the competition was about. Then there's this communication flow again, and then we get into the setup phase. So we're given access, and this is kind of where you get 2 weeks ahead of time, you get access to that competition environment. You need to assess, build, secure, and test their system prior to the competition, and then familiarize yourself with the scenario. You have to put together a document describing the steps that you took to secure it, and then a video. And then during the competition, they call it the attack phase. The red team will attempt to gain access, and then they'll have the assume breach as well. So you can read more, at least in terms of what specifically that all means within that document. I'd highly recommend, especially if you're looking at taking part in the competition, that you do read it. You don't necessarily have to read it fully, but just get a good idea in terms of what to expect. I think it was AWS. I'm trying to remember. They used to do it in Azure. I think last year they moved it over to AWS. We'll see if it's the same this year. I really don't think there was too much of a difference. It's not like, I know some teams when they heard that it was AWS and Azure, they thought they were going to be able to use some of the security tools within there, but you're not able to. So that's, unfortunately, you're not really learning a lot, anything particular to cloud security. But I thought this was just interesting. So they give some important steps that we should take. Within the competition, they had that assume breach. So they actually said that we can modify these 2 specific servers. And then there was additional machines that we should not alter. So that was just something that was interesting as part of that competition. And again, during next Wednesday's session about CyberForce specifically, I'll provide more information in depth regarding exactly what we were looking at there. But just generally, just kind of be aware of that. And there's our score breakdown again. I guess just to kind of read a little bit more about that assumed breach. Let's see. The purpose of the assumed breach model is for your team to investigate and accurately report back incident details after experiencing a successful execution of an attack. So that's one of the exciting things about this competition, is that in most competitions, you're completely preventing the red team from getting in. In this one, it takes more of an incident response approach, where they want you to be able to identify how somebody got in, and then also kind of report that as well. So that was just a fun part of the competition last year. You'll have at least 1 or 2 members of your team that is going to be responsible for doing that. So I thought that was fun. And of course, there's a traditional pen testing part of it too. So that's still there. It's not entirely gone. So that's just, I wanted to kind of point out that this document's up there. You're welcome to read through it. I don't think there's anything necessarily bad with sharing it. So I just thought I would share that with everybody. Alrighty, so now jumping back over. Alrighty. Now, at least in terms of some of the deliverables that we had last year, I kind of mentioned that orange team and that green team. So on the left here, we had to build a website. This was my little website that I built the night before the competition. As you can see, I kind of rushed to make it. It's a little rough around the edges. I had this little, rather than the logo of the company, I had this little retro Pikachu that I had there. I ended up fixing that so we can get more points. But at the very least, that was just kind of something that we had to put together. If you're ever interested in web design, that's part of the competition. Again, we got most of the points for this crappy little, the boxes aren't even lined up. So that's just kind of to kind of put your mind at ease. And then, as I mentioned, there's this portion about where we had to kind of communicate with upper management. So let me go ahead. I can very briefly play this video here. Let me go ahead and share my sound. Let's see. Come on. Share sound. There we go. So this is just a very quick, so in this one, we had to pretend that we were this one company, and then we were just kind of giving an overview. So I'll just kind of click around. We gave an introduction to the team, and then we didn't even have screenshot, like we didn't even have headshots of all the team members. And we actually got full points for this. So we had to give an overview of kind of what the situation was for the company. We talked about what was important to the company. We talked about some solutions that we had short term, and then I believe there were also long-term items that we had to do. So I don't know, at the very least for next Wednesday, I'll share this video in full with all the teams just so that they have it on their file so they can kind of know what to expect. And then I'll also share that, what was it called? There was also another security documentation that we needed. So that's just an overview of the CyberForce competition. Like I said at the beginning, this is more of an intermediate competition just because of the sheer amount of moving parts that are involved in it. So that's just what I would say about this one. It is a fun one. I mean, there's a lot going on. So it can be pretty exciting. You're learning a lot of different technologies at the same time. But again, especially for some of our beginners, I would stay away from this a little bit just so that you can kind of get more familiar with how competitions work, and you're not overwhelmed with it when deliverables start kind of flying around all over the place, and you've just gotten over midterms, and now you've got to do this competition, and now you're getting into November, so finals and projects are just around the corner. So that's just a note that I have there. If you feel like you're a little bit more on the intermediate side, you're welcome to go ahead and sign up. But that's just something that I would say there. Any questions about CyberForce before I move on to Hivestorm? Alrighty. So next we have Hivestorm. So Hivestorm is a fun one. I really enjoyed Hivestorm. So Hivestorm is a 2 to 4 student cyber defense competition. Essentially, what your job is you're handed a set of virtual machines, and now you have to identify different vulnerabilities that are within them and what different misconfigurations. And by misconfigurations, typically that's like, are there users that are admin that aren't supposed to be admin? Are there, for instance, 2 years ago, there was a software-defined radio application on there that was just there. Like somebody had the Xbox app on their computer. So you're just kind of going through, you're making sure that everything fits in line with kind of what you'd expect within a corporate computer environment or any kind of job computer environment. The registration, again, what's really nice about this one is that we can have as many teams as we want for this one. So with CyberForce, it's 6 person per team. It is in person this year. So for CyberForce, they're putting a cap on how many teams there are. But with Hivestorm, we can put as many as we want. So with Hivestorm, as long as if there's like a team that's like kind of like, oh, okay, we'll just give it a go. We're totally happy to sign that one up if you just kind of want to get experience with competitions. So at least in terms of the timeline for this one, registration closes on September 30th. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to have an interest form. We're going to try to get most of the teams registered by next week or the week after. And then hopefully we'll be all set to go. And then the actual competition is on Saturday, October 14th. Now, one of the nice things about this one is they give you a pretty lengthy time period, and you just have to pick a 4-hour time window within that time. So for instance, the competition starts at 10 a.m. and it goes until, let's say, 6 p.m. If your team wants to start at 10 a.m., great, start at 10 a.m. and now you end at 2. Or let's say you want to start at noon. Well, now you end at 4. Now it's important that it starts the first time that you power on one of those machines. So the moment that machine turns on, your time has started. So it's not like your team can split up into 2 groups. One can start at 10 and the other can start at 3. Unfortunately, that's not going to work. Your time's going to run out by 2. So that's just a note there. And of course, you're downloading the VMs ahead of time. So please, and I'll send out as like a million reminders as we're heading up to the competition, but you absolutely must download these VMs ahead of time, because their file share that they use for that cannot handle when all of the teams are trying to grab their VMs on competition day. You're just not going to be able to compete. So that's just a note there. And of course, I'll post reminders about it when we get there. And so this is actually the part where I'm going to stop recording. So I'm going to, alrighty, we're back to the recording. So any questions about Hivestorm before I move on to the National Cyber League? Alrighty, cool. So at least for National Cyber League, and I did talk about this, and Kat also shared a lot of their experience with National Cyber League as well. But National Cyber League is a capture the flag competition. So it's a set of cybersecurity challenges. This one is separate from the other ones. So both of those other 2 were completely free. This one costs $35 to entry. So it's not too much. Due to the way that the finances for at least in terms of like reimbursements on things like that, it's a little bit infeasible to look for funding for this one and to kind of pass that on, because it would have been a weird split, and it would have been a little inconvenient to try to get that all set up. So at the very least, generally speaking, it's a pay your own way with this competition. There are 2 different kinds of competition with this. There's an individual game, and then there's a team game. So for those of you that are not involved in CyberForce, because this happens at the same time at CyberForce, and you want to do the team competition, we'd be happy to kind of facilitate and work with you to get a team put together for the team game. And I don't remember the number of members per team. I want to say it's 6 or 8. I forget what the number is. But again, this can be a fun one, especially if you're more a beginner at cybersecurity. You're kind of getting your feet wet with kind of getting understanding of the terminology. I'll share with you all the kind of the dashboard that they have for National Cyber League. So this is, I'll show you the website. So here we go. Give me one sec. So I'll go ahead and I'll share the website. So this is the National Cyber League's website. They give just an overview of kind of what it is. And then at the very least, in terms of like actually competing, so Cyber Skyline, it's a separate website. It's a pain in the butt to try to get to, unfortunately. So you kind of just have to remember kind of where you go. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Alrighty, here we go. So if I go ahead and sign in, there's a gymnasium, and in a few weeks, I forget what date, I think I included it at the end of the presentation, but we're going to have Cat Stevens. They're going to give they're going to introduce the gymnasium. They're going to go through a few of the challenges, and that'll happen a few times this semester. So even if you're not necessarily signed up for NCL, that might be something that you might want to check out too. So I'm going to go ahead and enter. And NCL does quite a few things for you. So first of all, it gives you a scorecard so that you can kind of indicate, especially like if you're a beginner and you want to put something on your resume that kind of shows, hey, I've got some experience with these different topics. That would be a good thing to do, especially if it's a little bit more bare. So you can go ahead and talk more about kind of, okay, here are some of the challenges that I did with that. And then at least in terms of the challenges, so the gym again is for kind of practicing. So for instance, we have an open source intelligence question. They give you this picture of a little baby lamb, and they say, find out some information about it. So when was it created? And generally speaking, you just download the image, and then you look at the properties of it, and then you're able to get a lot of the information that's needed. So that would be like, for instance, the open source questions. Like for instance, then you get some threat intel. So like for this one, like what is the CVE of the original Poodle attack? That would just be an example there. There's some cryptography ones. So with those ones, it's going to be, here is some stuff in ciphertext. Go ahead and see if you can convert that to plain text. So in this case, they're saying, what are number bases? So you're going to be messing around with number bases. Like as you can see here, there's a binary set here. So most likely, if you just convert that back to decimal, or like back to ASCII, which are just your letter characters, you're able to kind of see what it is. And as they get harder, there's more stuff here. For here, there's just like, for instance, I don't know why I'm forgetting what the name for that is, but that's pretty famous. And then there's some very other challenges that you can do here. And then it gets into stuff like steganography. And then as part of this, since it is the gymnasium, they do give you a solution guide. So if you're having trouble, don't be ashamed. Go ahead and check out that solution manual or that solution guide if you're having trouble. And then there's other categories. So we have cryptography, password cracking, forensics, logs, scanning, all sorts of fun stuff that you can kind of go ahead and take a look at. And again, so that's just the gymnasium. Again, there's if I go back all the way, let me see, Cyber Skyline. Let's see, there's a practice game, an individual game, and then there's a team game. So you can do all sorts of things with this competition. So we like to just throw it out there. Even though we don't always necessarily have a team of IIT students, we just like to throw it out there just so that you're aware of it. It can be a good experience. I think Cat was like, I think 4th last fall, I think. I don't remember. I'll have to check with them to kind of see what place they did, but they placed extremely well. So we're extremely happy that they're giving us an overview, or at least doing some practice sessions this semester. Any questions about National Cyber League before I talk about the IIT competition?
No.
Great. So at least in terms of the last item, we have the Illinois Tech Cybersecurity Competition. So unlike some of the other ones, we're planning on making this an individual one. And it's designed as a beginner cybersecurity competition. So we're taking what we learned, especially for the NCAE Cyber Games, and we're going to try to convert that into something that's hosted here at IIT. So something that if you've never, ever competed in something before and you're looking for a low stress environment where you're just here at IIT, you're competing just against IIT students, this is kind of the thing for you. We're looking at doing, it's going to be a split capture the flag network defense competition. So there'll be some challenges that you'll get to solve. So kind of similar to those National Cyber League questions. But just kind of on a twist in terms of some of the stuff that we've collected or that we've kind of made over the years. And then we have a network defense. It's going to be a very small network. There's just going to be between 2 and 3 machines that you'll have to defend. Right now, we're planning on giving you at least tutorials, at least in terms of setting up services. So for instance, if there's a website on that machine, we'll give you instructions in terms of how to make sure that that website is up and running. And then we'll give you some basic intro to some of the defense stuff. The 0 to hero is going to help a lot in terms of kind of going beyond those instructions that we give you. But then other than that, we've just kind of got our red team that'll be just doing attacks. The tentative date is Saturday, November 18th. So be on the lookout for additional information regarding that. So that's just, again, this is all tentative. We're still working out the details on it. If it happens to get pushed back to the spring, that we'll make announcements for around that. But we just kind of wanted to announce that this evening in case there's people that are on the fence. They don't feel like they're necessarily ready for any of the other competitions, but they want to try something out this semester. And we feel like this would be a good entry point for it. One thing that we are going to highlight here is that we are going to be looking at, we'll have, at least in terms of some of the rooms where the competitors are going to be, we're going to have some of our exec board members that are going to be not only helping other students out, but if students are helping each other out, kind of helping each other set up their own network services, we do plan on giving out points for that. So we do, even though you're competing against each other, there is kind of a component there where you're going to be working together and helping each other out. So that was just kind of something that we added in there that we hope kind of helps kind of highlight that this is a beginner cybersecurity competition. At the very least, in terms of some upcoming, and then any questions about that one, we'll have more information on that one as we start to go through the semester. Seeing as this one isn't until November 18th, at least that's our tentative date. We'll have more announcements on that later. But seeing as that's the tentative date, we'll have more announcements later. But anybody have any questions about that, about the IAT competition? All righty. So at the very least, in terms of some important dates that are upcoming, so we have Kat Stevens. They'll be giving an NCL Gym Day 1. So they'll be going through some of the practice stuff there. That's going to be Friday, September 15th from 12:50 to 1:40. So over the lunch hour. So hopefully that helps out in terms of scheduling. Next Wednesday, and of course, these are all out of order now. But next Wednesday is our CyberForce info session from 9:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. It's highly recommended, especially if you signed up on the interest form to attend that session. So please make sure that you're there for that. Then we've got Hypestorm Practice 1. We're going to try to do that Tuesday, September 26th from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then CyberForce Practice number 1, Thursday, September 28th. So I'm planning on within the next 1 or 2 days. And yes, Jeff, there is I'll share on the next slide some sign up links as well that people can sign up if they're interested in specific competitions. So I do I don't remember what I was talking about there. But right, in the next 2 days, I do plan on setting up a calendar for everybody so that we can kind of get all these dates kind of visualized. So hopefully that helps in terms of some of the confusion. I know we were moving stuff around with 0 to hero. So that's just something that hopefully that helps kind of alleviate that. If you're interested in joining any of these competitions, so I have that's the sign-in form from the first page, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see if I'm able to go ahead and very quickly throw these links in the chat. I know I wasn't able to I didn't do QR codes for these. So this is the CyberForce one. So that's CyberForce. This one is Hypestorm. And these, I don't know when I'll share them. I'll probably share these tomorrow when I share the video with everybody. This is the NCL one. And then finally we have the internal competition. So I'll leave that up there. So again, there's 4 options. You can sign up for as many as you want, but again, like I said earlier in the presentation, that's it's not always internal competition. Yes, so that internal one is a low stakes one. We're gonna try our best. We're gonna have pretty strong rules on our red team in terms of like, okay, how long do you have to wait before you start kind of letting letting loose. And at the very least for half the day, it'll be mainly focused on kind of mischief rather than kind of burning everything down. So that's at the very least with that internal one. Any other questions that I can help answer? And we'll send an announcement. I'm hoping within the next 2 or 3 weeks to have a finalized information regarding that internal competition, whether it is happening this semester or not. So if you are on the fence and you do want to participate in at least something, that you're at least given a little bit of notice on that. Any other questions that I can answer? Alrighty, I'll go ahead and I'm going to start recording.